The crystal chandelier above the dining table cast sharp, glittering reflections across the polished silverware. I sat stiffly in my chair, the weight of my grandfather's gaze pressing down on me like a physical force. The air smelled of roasted lamb and expensive red wine, his favorites. My younger brother, David, lounged beside me, a smug half-smirk playing on his lips. He already knew. "Catherine," Grandpa's voice cut through the clinking of glasses. "There's something important we need to discuss." My fingers tightened around my fork. We, not I, not I've made a decision. We. As if this had been some Democratic family vote I wasn't invited to. "The Willow Creek Golf Club," he continued, pausing dramatically, "will go to David in my will." Silence. The words hung in the air, sharp as a blade. David's smirk widened. Across the table, Mom shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting between us. Dad busied himself with his wine, avoiding my stare. "You're joking," I said flatly. Grandpa's expression didn't waver. "It's final." The room tilted. Willow Creek wasn't just a club. It was mine. I'd spent years turning it from a failing business into the most exclusive golf resort in the state. I'd brought in sponsors, redesigned the course, even negotiated the TV deals for the tournaments. And David? He'd barely shown up for meetings unless there was free alcohol. Why? The word tore out of me, raw and unpolished. Grandpa sighed like I was a child refusing to understand simple math. "David needs the stability. You're already successful. You don't need it." A bitter laugh escaped me. "So this is a charity case now?" David leaned forward, his voice dripping with faux sympathy. "Come on, Kat. It's just business." "Business?" My voice rose. "You skipped half the board meetings. You called our top investor that old geezer to his face last year." Grandpa slammed his palm on the table. "Enough. This isn't up for debate." The finality in his voice snapped something inside me. I set my fork down with deliberate calm, the metal click echoing in the sudden quiet. "All right," I said, standing. "Then don't expect another cent from me. No more covering the club's debts. No more family donations. No more anything." David's smirk faltered. Mom gasped. "Catherine." I didn't let her finish. "Enjoy your club, David," I said, grabbing my coat. "Hope you remember how to run it when the checks stop clearing." The door slammed behind me with a satisfying thud. Outside, the cool night air hit my face like a slap. My hands shook. Not from sadness, but rage. How many times had I bailed them out? How many times had Grandpa called me last minute, "Catherine, we need you to fix this," while David got praised for just existing? I yanked my phone out, pulling up the banking app. Recurring transfers to Willow Creek Family Fund, canceled. Monthly donations to David's pathetic startup, canceled. Automatic payment for Grandpa's luxury suite at the club, canceled. A notification popped up. "Transfer successfully stopped." I exhaled, the weight lifting. This wasn't just about a golf club. This was war. By morning, the silence had broken. My phone buzzed before I even finished my coffee. Caller ID. Grandpa. I let it ring. The voicemail arrived a minute later, his voice cool, polished, and utterly predictable. "You understand this is just business, right?" Business. That word again. As if gutting my years of work and handing it over to an underqualified sibling was some neutral financial transaction. I didn't respond. Then came Mom. "Of course." Her voice trembled with hurt when I answered. "Catherine, how could you do this? Canceling the club donations? The children's charity? That's your legacy too." "No, Mom," I said, trying to stay calm. "That was their legacy, bought with my money and handed over like a family heirloom to the one person who never earned it." She started crying. I said nothing. For the first time in years, I had nothing left to say that wouldn't burn the last remaining bridge. An hour later, a text from David. "Lol, you'll be begging to come back soon. Just wait." I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the delete button before deciding to leave it unread. Let him wait for my reply that would never come. That afternoon, I went over my finances. The numbers looked better than I expected. Years of smart investing had given me a cushion big enough to land on, and bounce. The more I calculated, the more I realized something profound. They needed me more than I ever needed them. By evening, news of the financial cuts reached the extended family. My cousin Melissa sent a panicked message. "They're saying you're going to bankrupt the foundation." I didn't bother clarifying that the foundation had been limping along on my goodwill. Let them panic. Let them scramble to fill the hole I'd left. And then I made it official. I emailed the family group list. Effective immediately, I'm withdrawing all financial contributions to family ventures. If the club wants a benefactor, it can look to its new heir. No signature, no warmth, just a fact. A line in the sand. It wasn't long before the calls slowed. The begging turned to blaming. The narrative began to shift. Suddenly, I was the one who'd changed. I was the ungrateful one, the traitor, the problem. And to that, I raised a glass. The air was different now. Freer. The weight of expectation had lifted, replaced by something sharper. Resolve. In the days that followed, I started outlining a new project. A space of my own. Not a revenge move, not at first, but something that felt like me. A club built on actual merit, open to a more inclusive community. One that didn't cater to the boys' club and their whiskey-soaked power plays. It was a whisper of an idea then, but it kept me up at night. In the best way. Meanwhile, David posted a smug photo at the clubhouse. Him in Grandpa's old seat, drink in hand, grinning like he'd won the Super Bowl. I stared at it for a second, then closed the app. Let him play king in his crumbling castle. Because while he was clinking glasses and pretending he knew what EBITDA meant, I was building something real. Quietly. Strategically. Without asking permission. A week after the break, I passed the club gates on my way to a meeting. The sign out front had been changed. Willow Creek Golf Club, under new leadership. I laughed. New leadership with no budget, no sense of operations, and no idea that the club's biggest sponsor had only ever stayed because I asked them to. I made a mental note to give that sponsor a call. Not out of spite, out of strategy. Let's see how long David lasts without a parachute. Grandpa tried again, this time by email. Long-winded, patronizing, full of, "You've always been so emotional, and David just needs this more." I didn't reply. Let the silence be my response. It wasn't that I didn't care. It's that I cared too much for too long. And now, finally, I cared about myself more. They could spin the story however they wanted. I knew the truth. I had the receipts, the bank transfers, the dated emails where Grandpa begged for funding, swore it would all be temporary, promised I was next in line. Promised. And he'd broken it for what? Tradition, misplaced loyalty, a surname, and a Y chromosome? So be it. When the first payment bounced on the club's liquor supplier, I found out from a friend still working inside. She messaged me late one night. "You didn't hear it from me, but they're already cutting corners. David's been asking about budget wines. LOL. I smiled. The fall was coming, and I was done playing nice. It started with a letter, an actual envelope in my mailbox, sealed with the club's insignia like some smug little crest from a feudal kingdom. Inside was a formal notice. "We regret to inform you that your name has been officially removed from the Willow Creek Golf Club's list of co-owners and legacy stakeholders, effective immediately." No explanation, no signature. Just cold, final ink on expensive paper. I sat on my porch, letter in hand, as the late afternoon sun filtered through the trees. For a moment, I didn't move. I just stared at the embossed logo. That club had once been mine in every way that mattered. My energy, my vision, my funding. And now, like I was just some temporary assistant, they were wiping me out of the story. I should have felt rage, but what I felt instead was a strange, tight calm, the kind that comes before a storm. And then came the second blow. That night, I got a call from my accountant, Ben. He sounded off. Kate, you might want to sit down. There's been a report filed. An anonymous tip to the IRS. They're launching an inquiry into your last 3 years of business deductions, specifically tied to Willow Creek. My stomach dropped. You've got to be kidding. Wish I were. But whoever filed it had access to detailed figures. Internal numbers, of course. David, he had enough access now to spin a half-true narrative into a full-blown witch hunt. And he was stupid enough to think I'd fold under pressure. I hung up, my hands still steady. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Instead, I walked to my office, turned on my desk lamp, and opened my archives. They thought they were the only ones who knew how to play dirty? Please. I found it in my email, labeled under an old folder. Club emergency. Q3 budget shortfall. There it was. Grandpa's polite but desperate message from 2 years ago. Catherine, I know this is a lot to ask, but the club is going through a rough patch. A temporary loan would really help us stay afloat. Just until the next tournament brings in more sponsors, we'd be lost without your support. And not just one email. There were dozens. Messages with subject lines like, please keep this confidential, and let's not involve David in this yet. I'd covered their shortfalls, their bloated expenses, even paid off a vendor they forgot to invoice properly. All to preserve the family legacy. I spent the rest of the night screenshotting everything. Each transfer, each promise, each little breadcrumb proving how much they relied on me. Until they didn't. The next morning I posted. I didn't tag anyone. I didn't need to. The caption read, when your family cuts you out of your own creation and then tries to ruin you with lies, receipts speak louder than legacy. 10 screenshots. Just 10. Enough to ignite a wildfire. I went offline for the rest of the day, but my phone didn't stop vibrating. Friends, colleagues, journalists, even investors I hadn't spoken to in a year. The story exploded, not because people cared about golf clubs, but because people love a betrayal. By evening, hashtags like #FamilyFraud and #GolfClubGate were trending. Someone dug up old footage of me from a Willow Creek charity gala, handing Grandpa a plaque and thanking him for his wisdom. The irony hit hard. Then came the flood of apologies. Thin, panicked attempts to rewrite the narrative. Melissa messaged, you know Grandpa only meant well. It was about preserving tradition. Aunt Marie chimed in on my post. It was all for the family. You didn't have to go public. Even my mother left a voicemail, her voice low and desperate. You're making a mistake. This is our reputation you're tearing apart. Reputation? They'd already torn it apart when they betrayed me. By the end of the week, the damage was irreversible. For them. Sponsors began pulling out of Willow Creek. One posted a statement. We value transparency and ethics in our partnerships. Translation. They wanted no part in an elitist boys' club tangled in financial controversy and gendered favoritism. But the most delicious part? One of my old investors reached out with a question that nearly made me laugh out loud. Any chance you're thinking of opening a new club? One that actually values the people doing the work? I told him, give me 6 months. Meanwhile, David went silent. No snarky texts, no smug photos. Rumor had it he tried to throw together a press event to reassure investors. Only 3 people showed up, and one of them was his assistant. He underestimated me. They all did. They mistook kindness for weakness, loyalty for submission. They thought cutting me out would shut me up. Instead, it made me louder. And I hadn't even gotten started yet. In the quiet between media buzz and legal follow-ups, I had a moment to breathe. I went back to Willow Creek. Not physically, just virtually. I pulled up old photos, designs, event plans I'd led. It was like flipping through an album of someone else's childhood. And I realized I didn't miss the club. I missed what it represented, what I had built. The version of it that thrived because I was at the helm. And now I could build something better. On my own terms. Without asking anyone's permission. 2 weeks later, another letter arrived. This one wasn't cold. It was desperate. From Grandpa. Catherine, this has gone too far. You've made your point. We all made mistakes, but tearing the family apart like this helps no one. We can still fix this. Let's talk. I folded the letter once, then twice, and dropped it in the trash. We weren't a family. We were a dynasty built on silence, sacrifice, and appearances. I'd just broken the first rule. Never speak. Well, I'd spoken. Loudly. And they would never silence me again. It took less than 48 hours for Grandpa to strike back. I knew he wouldn't stay quiet forever. The man had built an empire on curated perception. Polished smiles, selective truths, and public approval. He didn't just value legacy. He weaponized it. So when my post went viral and the truth started circling beyond our gated family bubble, I knew it wouldn't be long before he tried to reclaim the narrative. He called a press conference. Not a family meeting. Not a quiet dinner like before. A press conference complete with cameras, suited lawyers, and a branded Willow Creek banner behind him like a royal crest. I watched it online. He stood at the podium like a disappointed monarch forced to scold a rogue relative. His voice was calm, but beneath it I could hear the bitterness, the panic poorly disguised as moral superiority. It saddens me, he began, to address a matter that should have remained within our family. Catherine has chosen a path of conflict and public spectacle. She has betrayed our trust and our values. She has chosen ego over unity. And in doing so, she has proven she no longer shares the values that built this family. Then the real blow. Catherine is not a victim. She is a woman consumed by her own ambition, unwilling to make sacrifices for the greater good. She abandoned her responsibilities when things didn't go her way. That is not what family is about. I laughed out loud, not bitterly, genuinely. Because hearing him accuse me of abandoning the family was like watching a thief report his victim for stealing back their own wallet. Within hours, I got my own invitation. For an interview, national outlet, prime slot. They wanted my side. I didn't hesitate. The studio lights were too warm and the makeup a bit too heavy, but I leaned into the moment with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. When the interviewer asked if I had any regrets about going public, I looked directly at the camera. Regret? What I regret is not walking away sooner. What I regret is sacrificing my time, my money, and my reputation to uphold a legacy that valued tradition more than truth. They say I betrayed family values, but values aren't inherited. They're demonstrated. And respect, unlike money, can't be passed down like an asset. The clip went viral within hours. One quote in particular got plastered across headlines, memes, and even t-shirts. Values aren't a golf club. They're not inherited. They're earned. The fallout was immediate, and not just for me. David panicked. That much was obvious. He made the mistake of trying to strike back not in public, but in secret. First, an anonymous leak suggested that my new business was being investigated for fraud. The leak claimed I'd funneled investor funds into personal purchases. Of course, the receipts didn't match up. My books were clean, meticulously clean. Still, the story got traction for about a day, until one of my investors called me directly, laughing. We got the same anonymous tip. Looked into it for 5 minutes. It's garbage. David's desperation is showing. Then came the sabotage attempts. Petty things. Emails sent to vendors pretending to be from me. Canceling orders. Negative reviews left on business forums minutes after each other. Clearly fake. Clearly coordinated. One vendor forwarded me a suspicious message with a telltale signature. Looking forward to working with you again. D. He didn't even try to hide it. Or maybe he thought no one would connect the dots. He'd always assumed his surname was enough protection. But the world had changed, and people were watching now. By month's end, the board of one of my old partner companies sent David a cease and desist. Investors had lost faith in him. The kind of trust that takes years to build and seconds to destroy. especially when your sabotage leaves a digital paper trail. My lawyers offered to pursue charges, but I declined. I didn't need a courtroom to win. He'd already lost where it mattered: credibility. Meanwhile, my new project, it was thriving. We hadn't even broken ground yet, and already I had more interest than I could handle. Not just from investors, but from people who'd left Willow Creek: employees, clients, trainers, even a few members. "If you're building something that values merit," one of them said, "sign me up." I didn't market it as revenge. It wasn't. It was liberation. Still, the silence from Grandpa lingered in the back of my mind like a storm cloud refusing to break. I knew him well enough to know the press conference wasn't his final move. He was the kind of man who only apologized after you buried him in evidence. And even then, he'd call it a strategic retreat. And sure enough, a week after the interview aired, I got a call from one of his aides. A formal request. "Mr. Whitmore would like to meet, just the two of you. No press, no lawyers." I thought about it for a full 3 seconds. Then I told her what I should have told him the night of that dinner. "There's nothing left to talk about. Tell him to take his values and polish them with the club's silverware." Click. Sometimes I wondered if I could have handled it all differently. If I'd stayed quiet. If I'd tried to salvage some version of peace. But peace built on obedience isn't peace. It's captivity. The worst part? I used to believe them. I used to think their rules made sense. That if I just worked harder, gave more, waited patiently, I'd be rewarded. I didn't realize the rules were never made for me. They were made to keep me in place. The headlines eventually faded. The hashtags stopped trending. But I didn't need noise anymore. I had momentum. My team grew. My vision sharpened. My new club had a name now, one I picked deliberately: Reclaim. Because that's what I was doing. Reclaiming power. Reclaiming purpose. Reclaiming me. I passed by Willow Creek one afternoon, unplanned. I pulled into the lot, sat in my car, and stared at the gates. They looked smaller somehow. The walls, the signs, the perfectly manicured hedges. It all looked like a dollhouse version of the place I once worshipped. As I sat there, I saw David walk out the front entrance. Alone. No cameras, no staff, no smile. He looked up and saw me. We locked eyes for a second. He didn't wave. Neither did I. Then I drove off. And for the first time, I didn't look back. The grand opening of Reclaim was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Because for the first time in my life, everything about it was mine. No hidden strings, no whispered, "Be a good girl," from across the boardroom. No one waiting to hand my work to someone else just because he fit their idea of legacy. Every tile, every policy, every team member had been chosen with intention, with care, with fire. I didn't build another version of Willow Creek. I built its antithesis. We opened with an inclusive membership model, mentorship programs for women and young professionals, and green initiatives that weren't just performative PR. Our launch party wasn't a stiff tuxedoed affair with crystal chandeliers and aged scotch. It was open air, modern, filled with laughter and actual diversity. People weren't performing tradition. They were celebrating evolution. And you know what? The city noticed. The first member who walked through the doors was a former Willow Creek regular, an older woman who used to avoid the board meetings because she was tired of being talked over. "This place feels like the future," she told me, her voice shaking just a little. "And I finally feel like I belong in it." That sentence stayed with me. It echoed every time I passed through the building. It fueled me when I was tired or questioned if I'd done the right thing burning the bridges behind me. But then, I'd look around, at the laughter in the cafe, at the local teens practicing swings on the new community range, and I'd remember. I didn't burn a bridge. I built a better road. More followed. Former Willow Creek trainers applied for jobs. Clients migrated, citing a need for integrity. Even some of the old suppliers switched to us, telling me off record that David's team had stopped returning emails weeks ago. Apparently, they were out of money. And then, almost exactly 1 year to the day after everything fell apart, my phone rang. Caller ID. Grandpa. I stared at it for a second, then answered. His voice was quieter than I remembered. Less grand. Catherine, he said, David's mismanaged things. The club's bankrupt. We're closing next month. He paused, waiting for my gasp, my grief, maybe even my gloating. So what are you calling for? I asked. We were hoping, he continued carefully. You might come back. Help us. Maybe take it over now. You always were the one with the real business sense. And there it was. Not an apology, not an admission, just another transaction. Another attempt to reel me in now that the house was on fire. I didn't hesitate. Sorry, Grandpa, I said, my smile audible in my voice. You said it yourself, didn't you? It's just business. I hung up. And for the first time, I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt peace. I used to think family was sacred. That no matter what happened, you were bound to them. Through blood, through loyalty, through shared history. But blood doesn't bind. Loyalty doesn't survive betrayal. And history? History forgets the ones who stay silent. Family, I've learned, isn't who shares your last name. It's who shows up when you're at your lowest. It's who claps the loudest when you rise. It's the people who don't take what's yours and call it tradition. It's the ones who see you for what you're building, not what you inherited. I found my family, not in a boardroom or under a gilded chandelier, but here, on new ground, on my terms, and I've never looked back.